Elon Musk said, I compete so far out into the future that there is no competition in the future. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that is an advantage, is you're playing a game that no one else is playing. So by stepping out to the future, there is no competition there.
So how do you do strategy? Like you said, okay, you have these 5 boxes. What goes in those 5 boxes? How do you decide that?
Yeah. Well, in Outthinker the Competition, my methodology is really simply like four steps that would be relevant here.
Please.
Imagine, dissect, expand, analyze. Imagine, what's our vision for the future? What's our goal?
Yep.
Dissect. Given all the parts of our business model, which ones should we focus on to get there? Should we focus on sales? Should we focus on people? Should we focus on execution? Expand is, given those things that we should focus on, what are 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 different ways to get there? Analyze is, of those 150 ideas, which are the 5 that are going to get us there the fastest, the cheapest, with the greatest ease? So those are the 4 steps that then plug into those 5 boxes.
Very cool. I love your winning moves document, your 2x2. Very simple. When you have all these ideas and people want to do everything, we have to help them choose. So tell me about that. How do you, so typically companies want to do way more, but they have capabilities. So how do you help them choose?
Yeah, it's sort of a balancing act of 3 things. One is, of the things that we're doing, are if we did those things, would it get us to our goal? So we set a revenue goal or a profit goal or market share. If we did these 5 things, each of those would get us so much revenue. And if we added them up, would it get us to our goal? That's number 1. Number 2 is, do we have redundancy? Because if we have, unless we're executing a strategy that we've already executed, there is uncertainty, and some things will work, some things won't work. And what you really want is, Sun Tzu said, you set multiple traps. So if your opponent, your enemy doesn't step into one, they back into another. So similarly with strategy, once some redundancy, if one doesn't work, another one will work better, right? So, but the third thing is your bandwidth and resources. Are we doing more than we can do? And the risk is not so much, in my experience, that you end up working too hard or spending too many resources. The risk is that of those 5 things, you do all of them only 70% of the way there. And the payoff doesn't really often doesn't kick in until you've gotten to 90 or 80% there, right? So you're doing these 5 things, but you only went 70%. So all you have is a bunch of foundational things that you put in place, and you've got your systems and your dashboard and everything, and you started selling, but you have not actually closed the deal. So then it looks like you failed across the board, but it's just because you didn't put enough effort and resources into the strategies.
Okay. You mentioned something about just getting it to 70%. Why just 70% and not to 100?
Well, because, if you took the pool of resources and time that you have, right, and you just try to spread it over 5 things, I don't know. I can't do the math so quickly in my head, but let's say you have 100 resources, and you have 5 things. Those 5 things would require 130 resources.
Yep.
Right? Now you only fill in each of those buckets by 7 out of the 10 that you need. Yeah.
All right. How to outthink the competition? How do you do a strategy that will go farther than your competitors? How can you make sure? We always say that most of the companies are talking very short term, and if you think long term and you do with great strategy, you are going to outthink them and overcome them. How do you convince companies to think more longer term?
Okay, got it. So I think those are 2 different questions. Thinking long term is one requisite for outthinking the competition. Okay. And then there are other requisites, but it does start with thinking long term. I think Elon Musk said, I compete so far out into the future that there is no competition in the future. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that is an advantage, is you're playing a game that no one else is playing. So by stepping out to the future, there is no competition there, right? I got to interview Elon Musk way before I graduated from him with him in high school, in college.
You went to meet Elon Musk?
I did, but I won't say I'm not friends with him. I didn't really know him. Before he is as big as he was, I used that as a way to get an interview with him when he launched SpaceX. So I do not claim any association with him or anything. I'd love to, but I don't want to misrepresent. So I use this to get to his PR person, and then I get an interview with him. And I asked him, how come you sold PayPal? You net $150 million for yourself, and you decided to invest all of that in building rocket ships. And his whole logic was that in the future, humans will become interplanetary species. That is the future. To achieve that, we need to build down the cost to build and launch a rocket ship. To do that, the government's going to privatize its space program. And so he's positioning himself for being the company that's perfectly tailored to take that off of their hands. So he's planning out into the future. And it's not a future. So that same week or the next week, I go and I do a facilitation for a leadership team of a large company that for many years has been building rocket ships and building missiles and jet fighters. And, I shared this interview and they laughed at him. And they're like, that is so far off. There's no point in plan. But it's like envisioning checkmate. If you're just trying to move your pawns closer to their king and you're not thinking ahead about what checkmate would look like, you don't see the strategic move that positions you for checkmate. So, yeah.